My number one hero during COVID was this Catholic priest from California. When everything began to shut down by orders of the government, he refused to stop ministering to his people. He died of COVID and then was made fun of, ridiculed all across the country because of how stupid and risky he was. Listen, when I get to heaven, I want to find him and let him know what a hero he was to me. Now, he had the correct response to COVID or any other tragedy that happens to our nation. You don't stop living. You don't stop helping people out. Which leads us to the government. They were behind all of this. I don't have words to describe how bad the government responded and managed COVID. And they still can't answer questions that they need to answer. A big one is the origins. Is this man-made? Did it come from the lab? Or is it natural? Came from a bat? And you know why? We'll never know, because government bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. are up to their eyeballs with this lab. So we'll never know. China got away with killing over 1 million people. Just got away with it. That's why I promise you there'll be another pandemic. We didn't even slap their hands. So if they can get away with killing 1 million people, no questions asked, you better believe another one is coming. Another question I have is, how many people died, not from COVID, but at the hands of government actions? Good example, Governor Cuomo in New York. Early in the pandemic, he would take COVID patients, throw them in the nursing homes, try to save the beds in hospitals. This killed thousands and thousands of elderly people in New York City alone. Several governors did that. How many other government actions literally killed many of those million we now know that died from COVID? How many people died from suicides, drug overdoses, murders, whatever, because of government regulations that left them alone and desperate? Listen, we could go on and on. Back in August, the CDC announced that was the first month that more people are dying from COVID who are vaccinated than people who are unvaccinated. So it's no longer a pandemic of the unvaccinated, as Biden called it. It's a pandemic of the vaccinated. Of course, they'll never refer to that. 4 months later, last month, in December, Reuters did a report. Pardon me for laughing. This stuff's crazy. Here's the title of the story. Fact check. Finding that most people dying from COVID are vaccinated does not mean vaccines don't work. It's just incredible. They can't give it up. The honest thing to say is vaccines work for some and not for others. It's up to your individual, your medical freedom, working with your doctor to decide if you want to get this or not. But they can't even go there because they're still in this mode of just managing this thing in an awful, awful way. I remember after 9/11, we came together as a community like I've never seen before. And then George Bush came out, the president, and said, listen, go on with your normal lives. Shop your local businesses, go out to eat, send your kids to school, go to church. We don't want to give terrorists victory by changing the way we live. Yet that's exactly what we did for China and this virus. Quit going to church, schools, all the rest. It was incredible. And even worse, we turned on one another. There's an official psychological phrase called mass formation. We saw it in Nazism. One of the parts of that is when you submit to the government line, if you hear an opposing viewpoint, you don't tolerate it, and you turn them in. Seriously, we did that. Called the police, somebody wasn't wearing a mask, or they were going to church when they weren't supposed to, or business. Listen, here's the bottom line. We can never, ever, no matter what happens, terrorist attack, virus, whatever tragedy hits our nation, we can't ever let this happen again. We have to stay together. We have to relate and take care of one another.